Welcome to Bridging the Bayou, where we will explore what it means to work, live, and play in the Bayou region. Join us as we take a deeper dive into the people and experiences that make our region such a special place to live and work. On each podcast, we will talk to individuals who are making our region grow and go, who are making strides in uplifting our community. This is a podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. Welcome back to Bridging the Bayou, the podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. I'm your host, Chancellor Kristine Strickland. And today, joining us on the podcast is Mr. Bren Haase. He is the director of BTNEP, and welcome to our podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have a discussion with you.
Yeah, so great to have you here today. So let's get started with the 5 and 5. 5 questions, 5 minutes, get to know you just a little bit better. Now, I have been told I usually have an order in which I ask questions, but somebody shared something with me, and they said, that should probably be the first question you ask him, because they believe that it sort of sets the stage for my second question, which is a little bit about getting to know you. But they said, recently you suffered a loss of your dearest green pickle? Is that what I'm to understand? Is this a boat that you have?
I did. I had a long time had a boat that was very old when I got it, and I had it for probably 20 years or so, and it finally kicked the bucket. So yeah, it was a small, kind of a small green boat, kind of looked like a pickle, and somehow people started calling it the Pickle. So that was the name of my boat, the Pickle.
Excellent. Well, we are so sorry that the green pickle suffered its demise.
It did.
But the person I was talking to, and you probably,
I know.
Yeah, you're getting a call after. But the person I was speaking to said that they felt like that sort of represented your passion for what you do. I've heard a lot about your love of hunting and fishing and being out in nature, and certainly BTNEP has a large role to play. So my second question for you is tell us a little bit about why BTNEP? Why is the director role something that you pursued and you're passionate about?
Well, the mission of BTNEP is the preservation and restoration of the area between essentially the Mississippi River and the Atchafalaya rivers. And that happens to be an area of the state that I've spent a lot of time in as a child growing up before I even kind of got into this career, and really kind of set me on this path, whether it be fishing or hunting or canoeing or boating or whatever, along Louisiana's coast and in the Atchafalaya Basin and places like that. Even as a young child, I started noticing changes in the ecosystem, changes in places that maybe weren't there, one year when they were there last year, or just other changes, places where silt might have built up and it was open water one year, but it's silty or vice versa. And it just always got me thinking as a young child, the why. Why does that happen? How does that happen? How does that work? And so because of those experiences really early in my life, it kind of set my path for my academic career and then ultimately into my professional career and where I am here today.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Real quick, what's your background in education-wise? What did you study?
I have a Bachelor's of Science in Marine Biology from Auburn University. Don't hold that against me. But I came back home and went to grad school at LSU and have a Master's in Science in Oceanography and Coastal Sciences.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Very apropos.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell us about a book that's had a significant impact on you?
There are 2 books I would put out there, I think, in answer to that question. One would be a Sand County Almanac. Great book. It's a very interesting book that is all about ecology, essentially, and kind of how the natural world works. It's a book I read a long time ago when I was in Auburn. I've been meaning to reread it, and I haven't done that. But now that you mention it, maybe I will.
I was going to say, I just prompted the book list here.
Yeah. Another book that is near and dear to my heart is called The Old Man and the Boy. And it's kind of similar in terms of it really talks about a young boy's experience with his grandfather, kind of doing a lot of the things that I was just talking about, hunting and fishing and spending some time. It's actually set in North Carolina, but it's very similar to some of my experiences here in Louisiana, and so it's a great book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
2 recommendations. Thank
Yeah.
you. Have to add those to the list.
Mm-hmm.
All right. How about a life lesson that you've learned that you wish you would have known when you were younger?
Oh, man. Without question, it would be don't be afraid to fail.
Okay.
I think one of the things I've always talked to my children as they've grown up about is if you're not failing, sometimes you're probably not trying hard enough. And that's something that I probably could have benefited from. I generally play it safe and have played it safe for a lot of my life. But take a few more chances probably, and don't be too afraid to fall on your face every now and again.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. I fall on my face all the time, so I must be doing something right. Is there a special mentor, somebody who's played a really important part in your life, and that can be professionally or personally, and maybe that's somebody that you'd like to recognize on the podcast today?
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my father, I guess,
Okay.
kind of for the reasons we talked about earlier, and really my whole family, grandfathers and fathers and uncles and grandmothers and mothers and aunts, and I know I'm casting my net awfully wide here, but I mean, those are the folks that, again, kind of enabled me to experience the things that I did as a young child, and again, kind of set me on the path that I am here today.
Wow.
Not just I think sort of scientifically or ecologically or from a natural systems perspective, but I think culturally too. So yeah.
That's so it resounds with me because some of the guests that I've been talking with on the podcast, I think a theme that I keep hearing is the importance of family and the role that family plays in our lives, especially living in South Louisiana and those experiences growing up, whether it was special experiences that you had with family, grandparents, parents, siblings, to, we had one guest who they live on the same street with their whole family. And so just how ingrained that is in our culture and how important it is. So I think that's really wonderful that when I ask about who's mentored you, it really was a whole compilation of your family.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it.
Right.
And for the record, I live within about a half a mile of my parents and my sister.
Well, there you go. All right. How's that work out? Good?
It's good. Yeah, it's a
Good.
good
Okay.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I left my parents when I moved down here in Ohio, but they followed me. And they did inevitably wind up living down the street from me. And now my daughter actually lives in the same apartment complex as my mother, which is a whole nother podcast. There's a whole story there, but we won't go there today. All right, last 5 and 5 for you is, what do you do to recharge and unwind outside of work?
Yeah, well, we've kind of hit on that theme already. I guess I enjoy fishing, obviously, and just getting outdoors and either hunting or fishing. And I've got 2 boys, so my wife likes to fish, and so it's a family affair generally. We'll go again fishing or hunting, and that's a good way for me to help kind of recharge my batteries.
All right. I'm gonna add a question. Favorite
Sure.
fishing spot?
Oh man.
Your go-to?
Yeah, well, I can't give that up on a podcast.
He could tell you, but
I fish really all over the state. Probably if I had to pick one place, it would be in the Chaffalot Basin. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, look, let's turn our attention to BTNEP. So the Barataria-Terrebonne National Estuary Program. Did I get that right?
You got it right.
All right.
It's a mouthful.
It is. So what is it? For those, we probably have folks out listening and watching this podcast who are like, maybe they've heard of BTNEP or maybe they haven't heard of BTNEP. So can you give us a 101 on what BTNEP is?
I sure can. Yeah, it's a great question. It's a partnership really between the state and the federal government. It's part of a non-regulatory program of the Environmental Protection Agency from the federal side and Board of Regents on the state side. That is a program to develop a larger partnership of any stakeholder essentially in that region between the Mississippi and the Chaffalot rivers. So about 4.2 million acres in the Terrebonne Basin and the Barataria Basin, 16 parishes. It's a huge area and one of the most, I would argue, ecologically and culturally significant parts of Louisiana. It also happens to be the place on Earth really that's losing land at the fastest rate anywhere.
Really?
It is, yeah. So,
and what does that look like? What are we talking about in terms of land loss?
we're talking tens of square miles a year.
A year?
Land lost, yes. Yeah.
Wow.
The state average, the latest state average, I think, was around 14 or 15 square miles a year. Well over half of that is happening in Terrebonne and Barataria Basins. Okay. Yeah, it's a bunch of it.
So, 2 quick questions for you. You're probably going to say, "I can't believe Chancellor Strickland, you don't know these answers," but I'm gonna take one for my audience too.
Yeah.
First of all, what is an estuary?
Yeah, that's a good question, and there are a lot of different sort of technical definitions, but the most basic definition and kind of common sense definition is it's an area where a river meets a sea. So it's an area where you have fresh water mixing with salt water.
Okay.
They're very productive because it's neither a river or a sea. It's that combination, and so you get sort of the benefit and the positives really of all things from the sea and all things from the river. When you put those two together and you mix them, it just the productivity skyrockets. It goes through the roof. Estuaries are some of the most productive areas on Earth. They're more productive than some of our most productive agricultural fields, for example. And that's why coastal Louisiana, most of which is an estuary, and certainly the Barataria-Terrebonne estuaries obviously are. It's where we get the majority of our seafood. It's where people have settled and live. It's large population centers, not just city of New Orleans, but Houma, Thibodaux, you name it, all Plaquemines Parish, all over. They're just really special areas, really productive and special areas.
Yeah. And so when we talk about land loss, what do we mean? Where's the land going? Is it just falling into the Gulf? Is that what's happening? Is it just becoming inundated with water? What does that look like?
Yeah, there's a couple of things going on. In part, it's eroding. So many of us have been to a beach, for example, and if you build a sandcastle, the tide comes in, it washes it away. Something similar to that happens along Louisiana's coast as we lose vegetation in particular. The tides and the waves and whatnot will erode a lot of our land. But one of the biggest processes that really has resulted in land loss is the fact that Louisiana is sinking. So, especially southeast Louisiana, we're built on a remnant delta, historic deltas. Those sediments are soft and muddy and squishy, and so as they build up on each other, it presses down on itself and starts to sink. And so as you lose that elevation, it exacerbates the erosion that I was talking about, but it also can just result in land, just like this tabletop. If it were to sink 2 inches and there were water here, it would come up above, the tabletop. And so that's happening along Louisiana's coast in a pretty significant way.
Yeah. And when you were talking about, going out and seeing changes in the environment, like for the folks who are out listening, how did they know? Like what might they be looking for where they go, oh yeah, Bren said I would see this, and that would maybe be an indication to me of what we're talking about, because we talk a lot about coastal Louisiana and the land loss and trying to save our coast.
Yeah.
But I think many people don't realize that they drive past it or they're seeing it every day, maybe just not recognizing it. What would that look like?
Yeah, well, I mean, it would look like a big area of marsh or an island of marsh, for example, that might have been, last year you might have driven past it or been by it in a boat, and again, it was one big island, and now it's 2 or 3, or perhaps it's not even there. One of the most striking examples that I always give, and when I have friends that come fishing or hunting with me from out of state, for example, and we're in a boat, if you look at your GPS, very often you'll look at your GPS and the GPS will show that you are on land. Yet you're in a boat, clearly not on land, on water, right? You're in water, and you look around and there's no land to be seen. And so that's just the artifact of the fact of there being an older map that shows those landforms, yet it's gone. It's not there. Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about what types of projects is BTNEP currently undertaking? What are you working on?
Yeah, we do kind of a wide range of projects. Again, kind of our mission is to preserve and restore the estuary. And that involves projects that help to improve water quality in our basin. So we do a lot of things with home sewage inspection, for example, and improving home sewage treatment plants.
I did not know that.
We do.
Oh,
yeah, we sure do. In the Bayou Lafourche and Bayou Folsom, in particular watersheds, getting ready to expand that into the Bayou-Terrebonne watershed. The nice thing about that, to me, is people think, well, you're coming in and inspecting, my sewage treatment plant. First of all, it's voluntary; nothing's forced on anybody. But we're not just inspecting and identifying a problem; we're also offering a solution. So we can provide grants to help upgrade those sewage treatment plants. So they're improvements to folks' homes that not only benefit, obviously, the homeowner, but also the entire watershed and the entire estuary. We do some work similar to that through DEQ that monitors kind of water quality trends within the basin that can give us an idea of where to target some of those kinds of programs. We do a lot of work with birds, a lot of bird work, so monitoring purple martin nesting sites. We're involved in the autumn and Christmas bird count. We do a lot of monitoring of bird usage of some restored areas. So CPRA, for example, has done some large-scale barrier island restoration work. We have been tasked by CPRA to do some of the bird monitoring on those barrier islands to see, hey, we built it. Are the birds using it? Is it, is this good habit? We know it's good storm surge abatement. Those islands, serve as a way to knock storm surges down. But from a habitat perspective, are the birds using it?
And our purple martins are not purple, right?
They're
Is
not.
that true?
They're not. Well, they're sort of iridescent purple. They're
okay.
probably mostly just dark or black.
Gotcha.
To the naked eye. But yeah, things like piping plovers and red knots and some of those kind of shorebirds we do surveys on along the coast. We have a native plant nursery, and so we do we kind of fill a bit of a niche that most of the commercial nurseries around do not. Many of them will provide marsh grasses for restoration projects. Right. We kind of specialize in native woody species, so things like mulberry and hackberry, wax myrtles, toothache tree, you name it. Those kind of trees that grow on some of the higher elevations within the estuary, ridges and whatnot. We are able to grow those plants out. We collect native seeds, first of all, native stock that are more, better adapted to these local conditions, grow those out, and we can provide those for restoration projects. So projects like the Spanish Pass project that CPRA recently built in Plaquemines Parish, we provided 65,000 plants for that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Where do you grow them?
They're grown just south of Nichols campus. There's
on the farm?
On the farm, yeah, Nichols Farm. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So,
I've never heard of a toothache tree.
Yeah. It's a tree. If you chew the leaves of it, it kind of it numbs your mouth.
Really?
Yeah, and so it was.
So it has medicinal values.
It does. It does. Native Americans, in fact, used it, and early settlers used it. If you had a toothache, you chew on it, and it would numb your mouth and help to alleviate some of that pain.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, indeed.
Huh.
Yeah.
I'll be darned. I'm just thinking if I can get out to the farm the next time I have a toothache, but I wouldn't know what I was looking for. So
we'd point you in the right direction.
Yeah, and and I was kind of grinning as you were talking about the bird watching. Mm-hmm. My husband, and I know there's lots of memes out there right now about as men get older, they like to bird watch. Well, my husband is true to form, so we got him one of those bird watching things.
Oh, good.
For the backyard, the bird feeder.
Okay.
So
with the camera?
Yeah, with the camera.
Nice. Yeah.
So maybe he can help out if you're looking for what native birds are flying through my backyard. He probably can give you some identification.
Absolutely. I'll have to put him in touch with some of our wildlife coordinator folks, and they can connect.
He believes himself to be a bird watcher officially. I said, you're kind of cheating because the computer's telling you what the bird is, but that's all right.
Yeah.
So I know you do a lot with the local communities,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe you could talk to us a little bit about what do those partnerships look like, and what kind of work happens between BTNEP and then local communities throughout South Louisiana that fall within your purview?
Yeah, so we do different events throughout the year to try to help connect our communities with our ecosystem. Bayou Lafourche obviously is sort of the longest main street in America, some people call it, and so we have an event each year called Paddle Bayou Lafourche. We just had it this October, and it's just an opportunity for folks to actually get on the water and be in Bayou Lafourche. It's the drinking water source for almost 300,000 folks in this region. It's a very important waterway, not just for that and for industrial uses, but also for maintaining sort of the freshwater balance in our estuary. I mentioned that estuary is a balance between fresh and salt water. Well, if you don't have the fresh water, you don't have an estuary anymore. You just have a sea. So events like that help to bring folks from the community better in touch with our ecosystem, with our what is arguably the most important waterway within the estuary. We do other projects though with some of our local communities. For example, we're doing a project now with the Lowlander group, but they have brought in some of our indigenous folks, indigenous tribes, to be partners in that project. It's a canal backfilling project where you so there are these location canals all over coastal Louisiana, right, where people drilled for oil and gas, and some of those are no longer in use. And so where they're not in use, the thought is to pull the spoil banks that are around those canals back into the canal to help restore hydrology and build a little extra land. And so anyway, we have partnered through Lowlander with the Pointe Chien tribe, with the Grand Bayou tribe and others within the estuary to identify some good locations to implement that project and have their input and kind of incorporate their local knowledge within within the implementation of those projects. So that's an example of some of the things we do with some of our local communities.
And the paddle Bayou Lafourche, I know that one has a lot of attention, right? That one gets a lot of coverage, and a lot has been done to make Bayou Lafourche really available for that. I know I've been living near the bayou for probably, I guess, about 6-7 years now, and when I first moved in, there was really no place to launch from. Now there are multiple launch areas. I think there's even kayak rentals if you want to do those. Have you guys been involved with that type of work as well in terms of the cleanup and the clean out and
Yeah, we sure have. So in addition to the paddle, we do actually have a Bayou Lafourche cleanup, which is coming up in April.
Okay.
Shameless plug. April
There you go.
5th, we'll have the Bayou Lafourche cleanup. If anybody's interested in participating in that, certainly go to our website or get in touch with us at BTNEP. But yeah, so access to the bayou was something that was really a problem for a long time. It was very shallow, first of all. The pumps in Donaldsonville that introduced the water from the Mississippi River into the bayou were in disrepair. And there's frankly just kind of trashy, not a lot of access, and wasn't a real pretty place to be. And so over the last really 15 or 20 years, much of that's changed. There are new pumps being installed to bring more fresh water into the bayou. It's been dredged. Obviously, we've been doing cleanups now for the last 15, 20 years or so. And there are more access points, as you mentioned. There are several new launches and kayak launches and things like that. There's a paddle club on Bayou Lafourche. So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, a rowing club, I should say.
Fun.
And so there's much more access to the bayou than there probably has been in the last 100 years.
Yeah, and I know Terrebonne is trying to do much the same, trying to create more access to the bayous as well. So.
Yeah, they sure are.
And, again, we hear all the time that access to the water, whether it's for recreation or fishing, is so important and is such an integral part of our culture here.
It is.
So that's great work that's going on. Talking a little bit about, and this is just out of curiosity, with the Mississippi and the intersection, and you not, I don't know as of late, but certainly we've heard of times where the spillway was open and things like that. What is the interconnectedness of what you all oversee connected to, say, the Mississippi? What's the intersection points on that?
Yeah, so we're really kind of from the west bank of the Mississippi, I guess, east to the east bank.
The best bank.
The best
By
bank.
the way,
there you go.
as a West Banker previously. Sorry.
Right.
Shameless
right.
plug for the West Bank here.
Yeah,
okay, go
absolutely. The Best Bank. Some of my best friends are from the Best Bank. But yeah, so technically, if you look at the lines on the map, we're from the Best Bank or the West Bank of the Mississippi to the East Bank of the Atchafalaya. But the Mississippi drives everything in southeast Louisiana, right? And so, in terms of what's coming into the estuary, there are a couple of freshwater diversions that connect the river with the Barataria Estuary. I mentioned the new pumps at Bayou Lafourche. That'll be another connection. And then on the west side of the basin in the Terrebonne and sort of Atchafalaya area, of course, that's heavily influenced by the Atchafalaya River, which is connected to the Mississippi. Everything's connected, of course. And so the water from the Mississippi, even that goes out of the mouth of the river at Venice, a lot of it ends up curling back around and coming back up into the estuary. And then you have the Atchafalaya again on the west that's pushing water to the east into the estuary. So,
wow.
yeah.
So it really, truly is all interconnected. I know sometimes geographically we think of the body of water just closest to us, and we think, well, that's not our problem, or we don't need to be concerned about it. But in truth, we really do.
Absolutely. It's and we both just said it, but it's worth stating again. Everything's interconnected, especially when you're talking about water. It all flows downhill, right? And it's all connected in some way, whether that's the Gulf of Mexico or further up basin and other places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that was one of the things that I think I learned early on. Speaking of that was just even the multi-state work that goes on or that needs to go on because of where the Mississippi flows. And you're right, everything comes down. So even though we're concerned about what happens in Louisiana, we also have to be concerned about what's happening in the states above us and paying attention. Very much so. As I mentioned, water rolls downhill, and so basically all the water from about 2/3 of the United States and a little bit of Canada flows right past where we live. Wow.
It ends up in the Gulf of Mexico, where we also fish and recreate and count on that for lots of things as well. So we do need to be worried about that. The Corps of Engineers is actually has just embarked on a large scale It's a Lower Mississippi River Comprehensive Management Plan. I think I got that right. LC. I won't try to name the acronym, but the idea behind that really is to take that larger look about and how the river is being managed from a flood control standpoint, from a navigation standpoint, and from an ecosystem restoration standpoint, not just in Louisiana or not just in Mississippi or not just in Arkansas, but for that whole lower part of the river, basically from Cairo, Illinois, south.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we talked earlier about, some of the challenges, right? Coastal land loss. What are the other challenges that you see that BTNEP is paying attention to, trying to seek solutions to the challenges?
Yeah, this is going to be maybe broader of an answer than you might be looking for. But to me, the biggest challenge, really in all of coastal Louisiana, but particularly in the Barataria-Terrebonne estuary, is how do we do work? How do we implement projects? How do we manage this system in the best way so that people can continue to live here for the longest period of time possible? And I do think that will be a long, long time. Don't get me wrong, but obviously we're facing challenges as it relates to more intense hurricanes and the land loss that we've already talked about and all that goes along with that. Insurance rates, obviously a huge issue. Anybody that is a homeowner or a property owner understands that, and so I don't have the answer to the question, by the way, but how do we manage this system? How do we do things to enable us to live here for the longest period possible? I think that's kind of that's in my mind, that's one of the burning questions that we need to try to start tackling and start answering. And it's going to be like eating an elephant. It's not just, there's no silver bullet, of course. And so, I think that involves people understanding what's going on in the ecosystem. And CPRA, in a former life I was there, I think they've done a very good job of kind of being honest about what we think the future of coastal Louisiana might look like. So that people can make informed decisions about where they're going to live, where they're going to invest in businesses and things like that. But also understand, what are some of the things that can be done to help prolong that timeline that I just talked about us being able to live in this area. And there are lots of ways to do that. There are lots of things to do. We can build bigger levees. We can do more restoration. We can build our barrier islands larger. We can, elevate homes so that they don't flood as often. We can fortify roofs so that they're not as impacted by hurricanes. I mean, there's all kinds of things, and all of those things, by the way, are going on right now. There's a lot of reason to be optimistic, I think. I don't want to be overly pessimistic at all, but nonetheless, that's a big question.
Yeah. Well, that brings up a question, sort of a follow-up question is, what, for the individual person who's out there listening, is there anything that we can do as individuals? We've talked a lot about bigger things, and those are certainly important, but is there something I could be doing at my house that's helpful or helps mitigate some of the risk? I know you talked about fortified roofs.
Yeah.
Certainly that's something that an individual might think about, right? But any other things?
I think elevating structures is a big thing. I think understanding that, if you're cutting your grass and you're dumping lawn clippings in the storm drain, that might have an impact on flooding, right? Things as simple as that, or changing oil in a car or a lawnmower or something like that. You don't want to dump that in the storm drain. That impacts the estuary as well. And I think just kind of a general awareness of some of these issues and kind of, I guess being aware of what some of the opportunities are. So there are a lot of opportunities, maybe not at an individual's home, but certainly along the coast to help with restoration efforts or even protection efforts. There are lots of nonprofits that are doing work all over the coast, either doing planting of restoration projects, putting oyster shells out, doing those kinds of things, and planting trees, things of that nature. We have Farm Fridays at BTNEP where we ask folks that are interested to come to the farm. They can help us manage the native plant materials that we have there. It might be weeding, pots or transplanting plants, things of that nature. But there are lots of opportunities like that can get people involved in kind of the coastal restoration and protection area. And so I don't know that we all do such a great job at advertising those. So it can take a little bit of legwork on individuals. From their perspective to be in the know about those kind of things, but it's not that hard to find out about them. So,
I assume that you would welcome classes?
Absolutely.
Whether it's collegiate or high school?
Yep.
Do you do field trip types of things like that?
We do. In fact, and when you asked about Scott, some of the projects we worked on, I sort of stopped short. One of the things that we do and have been historically, not so much lately, but we're getting ready to get back into this, is helping to develop education programs and curricula and so forth for mainly K through 12 teachers and students, and just having a lot. We do have a lot of resources that are available. They probably need to be updated, but that's one of the goals for this year, is to get back into that game a bit. We've not had an education coordinator for some time. We'd like to bring somebody on that can help us with that.
Right.
But in addition to that, and this is something I didn't mention earlier, if you don't mind me circling back
No,
to it, is
definitely.
we do a lot with sort of litter abatement and marine debris removal as well. So
Okay.
we do a lot of work on the Caminada Headland, Elmer's Island, that area. Obviously, we mentioned Bayou Lafourche cleanup. And we have done a good bit of work with a lot of, this is kind of interesting to me. It was interesting and something I didn't know about until I started, was working with some of our festivals. So French Quarter Fest, even Jazz Fest, and some others, where we have developed kind of best management practices for waste generated by those those festivals. As you know, anybody that's been to a festival, there's lots of plastic forks and spoons and cups and
Right.
and you name it. And so there's some ways to both reduce that waste, and then also to increase the likelihood that some of that stuff is recycled and reused, that kind of stuff.
So you're part of, I think, what was it, like the Zero Waste campaign, I think, at Jazz Fest last year?
Well, not at Jazz Fest, at French Quarter
At
Fest. I
French
think
Quarter
meant-
Fest? Yeah, maybe that's what it was. Yeah.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great work. You mentioned CPRA, and I know that you were with that organization, so Coastal Restoration and Protection Agency,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about what do they do, and then is it a partnership with BTNEP? What's the relationship there? Are they an umbrella organization? How do you see that relationship?
Yeah. So the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority is the state entity that is responsible, very similar to BTNEP, for the restoration and protection, but it's for the entire coast of Louisiana. And so they've done lots of good work for a long time. I was there for quite a time, so maybe I'm tooting my horn a bit. But it's a great organization, great dedicated group of folks that has just put a good process together in terms of master plans and annual plans and project implementation. Have sought funds to build really, really large scale, impactful projects across the coast. BTNEP is not technically affiliated with CPRA really in any way. We're not under an umbrella, CPRA umbrella or anything like that, but our missions are very similar and we do similar work. BTNEP, I think, has an opportunity to fill a niche that is not maybe filled by kind of the big guy, right? The CPRA is kind of the big guy in the room, if you will, and take a little bit of a more nuanced and maybe kind of niche approach to some things. So generally, our projects are a little bit smaller scale. They tend to, focus, as I mentioned, on things that CPRA doesn't necessarily do, like water quality or even education. And I think we're a little, we can be a little more nimble and, again, just fill a niche that can't be necessarily filled by a bigger organization like CPRA. And that's not to say, the work that CPRA does is phenomenal and is good. It's just kind of broad strokes, big stuff, highly impactful stuff. And so we are again kind of filling the niches that maybe a big organization like that can't.
Yeah, and well, I think with what we're facing, we need all hands on deck.
Absolutely.
Everybody pulling in the same direction.
Yeah.
It sounds like you all are. Well, mentioning education, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Fletcher has a wonderful partnership with BTNEP.
Yeah.
We have been very fortunate to receive grants that look at workforce development, education, and training, especially in our environmental sciences area. Maybe you'd like to talk about, your relationship with Fletcher. Maybe even talk a little bit about your relationship with K through 12 and Nichols State University.
Yeah.
How do you work with these educational partners to really elevate what our community knows about what's happening with our estuary and with everything going on?
Yeah, well, one great project and partnership that we have going on with you right now, of course, is the Pathways to Reentry, right? That project.
Yep.
So where maybe you can help me fill in some of the blanks here,
Yeah.
but where obviously we're providing funding for scholarships for, I think, up to 16 students to receive scholarships to either get certifications in the Coastal 101 seminar or through heavy equipment operator through that sort of line of training and education. And so that's one way that we're involved, obviously, in education across the coast. And that is a unique opportunity, I think, to have folks that otherwise might not have a chance get involved in this kind of burgeoning, coastal restoration economy that's going on. There's a lot of dollars are being spent in coastal Louisiana right now that's driving really a significant, economy right now. And there's a shortage of folks that are needed to work in that area. So that's a really cool project in my mind, and I'm really excited to be working with you guys on that.
Yeah, we're thrilled about it. When you think about those who are justice involved, right? And so they've done their time, and they've completed what they needed to complete as a part of their sentencing or their judicial process, and they're looking to start anew.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times we have, as a society, sort of left those individuals kind of on the bench, and they want to be participating members of our communities. And so I agree. I think, you partnering with us to help get those individuals back into the workforce with meaningful work, and especially in this sector, right? Because what they're doing is so critical to the survival, in many ways, of our communities and of our culture, that I think for many of them, it goes beyond just, I need a job. And it can become something more to them than just that. So really do appreciate your partnership with that.
Oh, yeah.
And you mentioned the Coastal 101, and I do want to come back to Nichols and the K through 12 partners, but we are also excited about the Coastal 101 program. This came out of some funding from Terrebonne Parish Consolidated Government. And what we're really hoping to do with those dollars is to introduce individuals who maybe have an interest in these fields or want to work in this environment. There's a lot of projects, a lot of funds coming to South Louisiana to incorporate, and there's a lack of workforce. We need individuals who are trained, but the coastal work is maybe a little bit different. Driving a piece of heavy equipment on a construction site in Baton Rouge looks different than driving a piece of heavy equipment on Elmer's Island, right?
Yeah.
Or wherever on the coastline. And so making sure that people understand, even down to one of the things I learned was that you were speaking about native birds and just wildlife, right? And knowing if you're working, like you could be driving a bulldozer, but you need to be aware of what's protected.
That's right.
Right? You see a nest that belongs to a certain type of bird,
Yeah.
you have to stop work completely. And so there's a little bit more to it than just, can you get in and drive a bulldozer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm really excited about it too, and I can't wait to see. How it turns out. One of the things that people ask me a lot along these lines is, well, how do you get into this sort of line of work? What do you need to do? And honestly, you just need an interest in it, because it's multidisciplinary. People think, well, you either have to be an engineer or a scientist to do this kind of work, and that we need engineers and scientists to do this kind of work. But there's a whole cadre of folks and other professions, from welders to operators, equipment operators, to accountants, to attorneys, to bookkeepers, to you name it. If you do it, it's part of kind of a heavy construction or any kind of a program that's being run. We need those people in this realm, and so you might be an equipment operator, as you said, working on Walmart in Baton Rouge, but we definitely need those folks working on a Barrier Island project in Terrebonne Parish as well. So you just have to have an interest and the desire to do work in that area.
Yep. Have you been over to drive our airboat yet?
I have not.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have a new airboat certification. I'm going to put a little plug in.
All
so
right.
we might have to get you over and get you in the boat. You probably don't need the training, I'm sure. I'm sure you probably have that part, but we can get you certified.
Absolutely.
How about that?
I would love to do that.
So what about other partnerships with other educational partners? Anything you want to mention there?
Well, we are located, as you mentioned, on Nichols State University, and so we do have close ties with Nichols, of course. We do some work with a few of the classes, I should say, on Nichols campus as well. I'm a bit remiss to say we've not had an education coordinator for a couple of years, and so some of the relationships I think we had kind of in the K through 12 realm have not been as good as they need to be, and that's something again that we're looking forward to fixing this year and getting back in the game a little bit as it relates to that. I know, we've got a lot of materials that are out there. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're a teacher, please go to our website and look at what we've got, or give me a call or whatever you need to do to get in touch with us. But some of those things need to be updated with new standards and so forth, and probably freshened up a bit.
Yeah. Tell us your website while we're talking about
It's btnep.org.
Okay. So when you think about the future, and I know you're relatively new in your position, right? How long have you been there?
It's been just about 6 or 7 months now.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
You do know a lot. Great knowledge base.
Well,
Fast learner, right?
Yeah.
But when you're thinking about visioning as the new leader of BTNEP,
Yeah.
what do you see in the future, whether it's 3 years from now or 5 or 10 years from now? What do you see for our future, not just in general for our communities, but for BTNEP?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I see us in new offices. I think
Okay.
we'll be moving to the new Coastal Center.
Oh, that's right,
being
the new
built.
Coastal Center.
Yeah, that'll be built, is being built on Nichols campus, and we're anticipating hopefully moving in there sometime in the spring. So newer, shinier, and hopefully a little bit better facilities and offices will be in there. But no, I envisioned a well-run program. If I'm running it, hopefully it's going to be run well, of course. I envision that we will be reaching folks that perhaps we aren't reaching right now. And I don't even, as you said, I am relatively new. I'm not sure I even know who all those people are, right? You don't know what you don't know yet.
Yeah.
But I want to be a very open, inviting place, if you will, or space kind of in the coastal restoration and protection realm for folks to come and ask questions and hopefully seek answers to, solutions to problems that we have along the coast. I think we've been doing that. BTNEP, again, has been doing that for a long, long time. But I do think I can bring a little bit of a fresh spin to that, and maybe some renewed energy, and so I'm hopeful we'll be successful in doing that. The staff we have is great. It's been very refreshing and pleasant to come into a situation. You never know when you come into a place new, right? What you're walking into. But the staff is extremely knowledgeable. They're very dedicated and have great ideas and a lot of good energy to get things done.
Yeah. How about the White Boot Gala? Want to talk about that?
Absolutely, yeah. The White Boot Gala. So I went to my first one in September of last year. It's an annual fundraiser that our foundation puts on. We have the Barataria-Terrebonne Estuary Foundation as a fundraising arm that is affiliated, of course, with us to support BTNEP, the program. And, it was great. It was held at SPARS. It has been held at SPARS for years and will be held at SPARS this year, I know. And folks showed up, and including myself, in our white boots, right? And some of them very uniquely and interestingly decorated, and silent auction, meal, live music from the Cajun Heritage, Cajun, I'm going to mess this up, the Cajun music.
Cajun Heritage Music.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
We'll get there.
Anyway,
somewhere
Cajun
Misty,
music. Yeah.
who helps us with this podcast, is saying, "Christine, I can't believe you don't know that." But
Same here.
because I do play with them on occasion when they do their jams. But
Cajun
anyway,
Music Preservation Society.
there you go.
Thank you.
We needed a minute.
knew it would come to me. But so anyway, it was a great night, great event. We had a record-breaking crowd. Over 100 folks were there, and raised a good bit of money for the foundation to help support the good work we do. So
it was a great
nice.
event. That was my first one.
It was nice seeing you there.
I really
Yeah.
enjoyed it. We will be back. And I asked you earlier, what could individuals do? That would be one thing they could do, is make a donation if they're really passionate about the work that you all are doing, want to support. Want to, make a contribution, they can do that through your website as well?
They can, yes.
Okay.
They sure can. Yep, absolutely.
Wonderful.
And that would be most welcome.
Great. Well, look, we always like to end asking our guests if you have a piece of advice and it can be anything, but for the folks who are out there watching on YouTube or maybe listening in their car, anything you'd like to share as words of wisdom?
I would say, and it's similar, I guess, to what I said earlier, but just go for it. If you think you want to work in coastal restoration, go talk to somebody about it. Talk to me about it. Go for it. Be a pest until people can't turn you down, right? If you're looking for a job, or if you're trying to get a volunteer opportunity or get into school to study these kind of things, go for it, and don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah. And I would, again, just to say, I agree with you, right? If you reach a point, if you're out there and you're listening and you're thinking, I would like to do this, even give us a call at Fletcher.
Yeah.
I share all the time, the average age of our student is 29 years old. These are people who have started careers already, maybe looking for a career change, looking for something new, looking for a fresh start.
Yeah.
And certainly you can start that journey in coastal restoration and protection right here at Fletcher. And we would love to talk to anybody who's interested.
Absolutely.
So one last question, and again, I can see you giggling because I've talked to some folks. I understand you have walk-up music.
Oh, gosh.
You don't have to say if you don't want to, but...
Yeah. So I was doing one of these podcasts a while back and similar questions. And the question was, what would your walk-up song be? That was kind of a warm-up question, right? And I had a moment of panic, and I had been listening to Reba McEntire, and I blurted out Fancy. So Fancy is my walk-up song, apparently, and will be for forever and ever. Amen.
Here's your one chance, Fancy.
That's right.
All right. And you did not let me down. You were a wonderful podcast guest today.
Well, good.
Just one more time, for those of you who are interested in getting involved with BTNEP, please visit www.bitnep.org for more information. And if you want to get involved or you just want to make a contribution, you want to learn more about the fantastic work that's happening there, be sure to reach out. And if you get a chance to come to any one of the events, whether it's the Bayou Cleanup, again, what's the date of that?
April 5th.
April 5th. For more information, or maybe Paddle Bayou Lafourche, or even the White Boot Gala, they can reach out to you and get more information, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you all again for joining us here on Bridging the Bayou, the podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. We hope that you will tune in again, and be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for listening to Bridging the Bayou, the podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.